When I bought this farm, I was given a land map. Not a rough sketch, a proper one. Clear boundaries, marked sections. Every part of the property laid out. Everything looked accurate, normal. The first day, I decided to walk the entire property. I wanted to know exactly what I had. I took the map with me, checked everything as I went. Fences matched, paths matched, sections matched. Nothing was off. It took most of the day. By the time I got back to the house, I was tired, but satisfied. Everything lined up. That night, I opened the map again, just to look at it one more time. That's when I saw it. A small X, marked near the back of the property, in a place I knew I had already walked. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I pulled out the original copy, the one from before. There was no X. I placed them side by side, compared everything. Same lines, same layout, same details, except for that mark. I figured I must have added it myself. Maybe I marked something during the walk and forgot. That happens. So I didn't think much of it. I folded the map, left it on the table. The next morning, I went out to that spot, just to check. There was nothing there. No damage, no sign of anything unusual. Just an empty patch of land. I stood there for a minute, then went back, and almost forgot about it. Until later that afternoon, one of my cows was dead. No clear injury, no sign of sickness, just lying there, still. And it was in the exact spot where the X had been. I didn't move, not because of the cow, because of the location. I remembered that place clearly. I had stood there that morning. There had been nothing. But now, something had happened there. That night, I opened the map again. The X was gone. I stared at the page, waiting for it to come back. But it didn't. Instead, there was a new one, in a different spot. Small, like it had just been added. I didn't fold the map this time. I left it open on the table. Sat there, watching it. Because at that point, I didn't need to guess anymore. I understood enough. The map wasn't recording anything. It was marking something before it happened. The next morning, I went to the new spot, earlier this time, before anything could happen. I stood there, waited. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Just an empty piece of land. I checked the time. Waited longer. Still nothing. Eventually, I went back, telling myself maybe it was coincidence. But I didn't believe that. Not anymore. That afternoon, I returned to the same spot, same place. And this time, there was a small hole in the ground. Fresh. The soil still loose, like it had just been dug. I didn't remember doing it. I had no reason to. But it was there, exactly where the X had been. That night, I didn't close the map. I left it on the table, lights on, just watching, waiting. And sometime around midnight, A new X appeared. This time, it wasn't outside. It was inside the house, right over the bedroom. I didn't stand up, didn't go near it. I just stared at it. Because at that moment, I wasn't thinking about checking it anymore. I was thinking, if the map is right, then by morning, something is going to happen inside that room. I didn't go into the bedroom that night. Not after seeing that mark. Not after understanding what it meant. I stayed in the living room, lights on, door open, like that would make a difference. Like staying out of that room would stop whatever was coming. I kept checking the map every few minutes. The X didn't move, didn't change. It stayed exactly where it was, right over the bedroom. Waiting. Hours passed. Nothing happened. No sound, no movement, no sign of anything wrong. Just silence. Thick. Heavy. Like the whole house was holding something back. At some point, I must have blinked, just for a second, but when I opened my eyes, the room felt different. Not changed, just shifted. I looked at the clock, 2:17 a.m. The last time I checked, it had been just after midnight. I hadn't fallen asleep. I didn't remember losing time. But it had happened. Again. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, and turned toward the hallway, toward the bedroom. The door was still open, exactly how I left it. Nothing out of place. But something felt wrong. Not in the room, in me. I stepped closer, one step at a time, until I reached the doorway. I didn't go inside. I just stood there, looked in. Everything looked normal. Bed, window, nothing moved, nothing changed. Just a quiet room, exactly like it should be. And that made it worse. I turned back, went to the table, picked up the map. The X was gone. Completely gone. Like it had never been there. My chest tightened, because I already knew what that meant. Something had happened, and I had missed it. I went back to the doorway. This time, I stepped inside, slowly, carefully, like I was walking into something I couldn't see. The air felt colder, heavier. I looked around. Nothing. No damage. No signs of anything wrong. Until I looked at the floor, near the side of the bed. There were marks. Not clear, not deep, but there, like something had pressed into the floor or dragged across it. I crouched down, touched it. The wood was slightly dented, fresh, not old. Something had been there, something heavy, and I hadn't seen it. I hadn't heard it. I hadn't remembered it. I stood up slowly, turned toward the mirror on the wall. Just out of instinct, just to steady myself. And that's when I saw it. There was a mark on my neck. Faint, dark, like a bruise, like something had pressed there, hard. I froze. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because I hadn't been in this room. I hadn't gone near the bed. I had stayed out. I had avoided it. But something had still happened. I went back to the table, looked at the map again, and that's when I noticed it. A new mark. Not an X this time. Something different. A small circle with a line, like an arrow, pointing. I leaned closer, heart racing, because I already knew what I was looking at. The circle was my position, right there, inside the house, and the arrow was pointing toward it, slowly shifting, moving closer. I didn't look up, didn't turn around, because I didn't need to. The map wasn't just marking where something would happen anymore. It was showing me where it was coming from. I didn't move right away. I just stared at the map, at the circle, at the arrow, watching it shift, slow, steady, getting closer. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I stepped away, out of the room, into the hallway, and I watched the map. The circle moved, tracking me. Exactly. But the arrow didn't follow the hallway. It didn't trace the path I would take. It didn't curve. It didn't turn. It cut straight through the map. A direct line, from wherever it was, to me. I stopped walking, stared at it, trying to understand, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then I moved again, faster this time, into the living room, then toward the front door. The circle followed, but the arrow shifted instantly, adjusting, still pointing straight at me, no matter where I went. I opened the door, stepped outside. Cold air hit my face. The yard was empty, quiet, too quiet. I looked down at the map again. The circle, now outside, right where I stood. The arrow, closer, shorter distance now. It wasn't following roads. It wasn't following space the way I understood it. It was just closing the gap. I started walking, then faster, then running, across the yard, toward the far end of the property. If distance mattered, if time mattered, maybe I could stay ahead of it. Maybe I could reach somewhere before it reached me. I kept glancing down at the map, the circle moving, the arrow adjusting, always pointing, always correcting, like it didn't care about obstacles, like nothing was in its way. I reached the fence line, stopped, turned. The house behind me, the field beyond. Everything looked normal, still, empty. But the map wasn't. The arrow was almost touching the circle now. I stepped sideways, just a small movement. The circle shifted, and instantly, the arrow corrected, still closing in. No delay, no hesitation. That's when I understood. It wasn't chasing me. It didn't need to. It already knew exactly where I was. Every second, every movement. I backed away from the fence, slowly, eyes on the map, watching the distance shrink until it almost reached the circle. Just a thin space between them. I stopped. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because I didn't know what would happen when it reached me. Seconds passed. Nothing changed. The arrow stayed just short. Not touching. Not yet. I waited, heart pounding, trying to hold that distance, trying not to move, because something told me the moment it reached the circle, something would happen, something I wouldn't be able to stop. Then I blinked, just once. When I opened my eyes, the sky was darker, the light had shifted. Time had passed. I looked down immediately at the map. The arrow was gone. The circle still there, right where I stood. But no arrow, no direction, nothing coming toward me. Just empty space. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel safe. Because if it had been moving toward me before, and now it wasn't on the map anymore, then there was only one explanation left. I slowly lifted my head, didn't turn, didn't look behind me, because I already knew. It didn't need the map anymore. It had already found me. I went back inside slowly. Didn't run, didn't rush, because it didn't matter anymore. Distance didn't matter. Movement didn't matter. Whatever that thing was, it had already reached me. I closed the door behind me, locked it. Even though I knew that wouldn't stop anything, I went straight to the table, picked up the map again, hands shaking, trying to think, trying to understand what I still had control over. The circle was still there, marking my position, exactly, precise, like it always had been. But the arrow was gone, completely gone. No direction, no warning, nothing to track. Just me, and that made it worse. I stared at the map for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't tried before. I moved my finger, placed it on the paper, right next to the circle, and I pushed it, just slightly, dragging it across the map, like I was moving my position. For a second, nothing happened. The circle stayed where it was, unchanged. I exhaled, almost relieved, until the room shifted. Not visibly, not like something moving, but like something realigning. I stumbled, caught myself on the table, and looked up. The room was different. Not completely, but enough. The chair was in a slightly different position. The window, a different angle of light. Small things, subtle, but wrong. I looked back down at the map. The circle had moved to where my finger had dragged it. Exactly. Precise. Like it had always been there. I froze. Didn't move. Didn't touch it again. Because I understood immediately. This wasn't just a map. It wasn't showing me anything. It wasn't recording anything. It was deciding. and I had just changed something. I stepped back from the table, slow, careful, looking around the room again, trying to spot more differences, trying to figure out what I had just done. Then I noticed it. The hallway leading to the bedroom. It looked longer, not by much, just enough that I couldn't ignore it. I walked toward it. One step, then another. The distance felt off, like I wasn't covering as much ground as I should, like the space had stretched. I stopped halfway, turned around. The living room, slightly farther away than it should be. Everything's still there, but not where it used to be. I went back to the table, looked at the map again. The layout had changed. Not drastically, but enough. The lines, the spacing, the proportions, they didn't match what I remembered anymore. And then a new mark appeared. Not an X, not a circle, something else. A second circle. Small, faint, just a few inches from mine. I stared at it, trying to understand, trying to process what it meant. Because this time, it wasn't pointing. It wasn't approaching. It was already there. I didn't look up, didn't turn, didn't check behind me, because I didn't need to. If the first circle was me, then the second one was something else, something already in the same space, something that didn't need to move anymore. My hand tightened around the edge of the table. I could feel it. Not a sound, not a movement, just a presence. Close. Too close. And for the first time, I understood what the map really was. It wasn't helping me see where things were. It was showing me where things already existed, whether I could see them or not. I didn't move. Not after seeing the second circle. Not after understanding what it meant. Because whatever it wasn't coming anymore. It was already here. I kept my eyes on the map, hands gripping the edge of the table, trying to stay grounded, trying to think. Because if the map could change things, if it could move me, then maybe I could use it. I reached out again, slowly, carefully, placed my finger over the circle, the one marking me, and I pressed down, hard, as if I could hold myself in place, as if that would stop anything from happening. Then I dragged it, not across the room, not across the house, off the map, past the boundary line, outside the property. For a second, nothing happened. The paper didn't react. The room stayed still. Everything felt normal. I almost believed it worked. Until the map updated. The circle was gone. completely gone, like it had never been there. My chest tightened. I looked up immediately, at my hands, at the room. Everything still there, still real, still solid. I exhaled, a small, shaky breath, because for a moment, I thought I had figured it out. I thought I had found a way out. Then I looked back at the map. The second circle was still there, unchanged, in the same spot, inside the house, exactly where I had been standing. I stared at it, trying to understand, trying to process why it hadn't moved, why it hadn't followed. And then it changed. Not position, not shape, something else. A small mark appeared inside it, a line, like a symbol, faint at first, then clearer. It looked familiar, too familiar, because I had seen it before. Not on the map, in the mirror, on my neck. That bruise, that mark, the same shape, the same pattern. My hand went to my throat, slowly, carefully. I could still feel it, still there, still real. But on the map, it was clearer, defined, complete, like something had finished. I stepped back from the table, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand what had just happened. Then it hit me. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to know I had been wrong. I thought removing myself from the map would remove me from whatever it was tracking. I thought if I wasn't marked, it couldn't reach me. But that wasn't how it worked. Because the map wasn't tracking me. It never was. It was tracking what was happening to me. And now, there was only one mark left. The second circle. The one still inside the house. The one that hadn't moved. The one that hadn't needed to. Because it had already taken my place. I looked up, slowly, at the room around me. Everything still there, still familiar, still mine. But something felt off. Subtly, quietly, like I was no longer part of it, like I was outside. Even though I hadn't moved. I turned toward the mirror, took a step, then another, and stopped in front of it. I looked at my reflection, waited for it to move, to match me, to confirm I was still there. It didn't. It stood still, looking straight ahead, not blinking, not breathing, not reacting, just there, like something that belonged to the room, not to me. I didn't move, didn't try to fix it, because I already knew. I hadn't removed myself from the map. I had removed myself from everything else. And for the first time, I understood what that second circle really meant. Not something next to me, not something behind me, something that had replaced me. inside a place I could no longer reach.